Order. Order. I call Dr. Order. Order. I call Dr. Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is the Cabinet Club budget. The Finance Minister has delivered the Cabinet Club budget on behalf of the National Party. This is the budget of the 1%, by the 1%, for the 1%. The wealthiest 1% in our country owns 16% of the wealth. This Cabinet Club budget will make sure the 1% get given even more. But 50% of everyday New Zealanders only own a tiny 5% of all the wealth in our country. This Cabinet Club budget will make sure that they get even less. That's how Cabinet Club works. The Cabinet Club budget says to the overwhelming majority of New Zealanders, you are excluded from the Cabinet Club, this is not a budget for you. But the Cabinet Club budget is a budget for the polluters. If a corporation pollutes a river, then the Cabinet Club budget will subsidise that pollution. If a corporation pollutes the atmosphere with greenhouse emissions, then the Cabinet Club budget will subsidise that pollution. If a corporation wants to mine a park, or it wants to mine in the spawning ground of blue whales, then the Cabinet Club budget will subsidise that mining. This is a budget for those who have the ear of the Prime Minister. The vast majority of New Zealanders who hoped that the government might stand up for them, well, those people aren't welcome to be members of the Cabinet Club. Now, just because ordinary New Zealanders are excluded from the Cabinet Club, that doesn't mean that they don't have a role. You see, ordinary New Zealanders are welcome to pay the bills at the Cabinet Club. In fact, they are required to. When the members of the Cabinet Club gave themselves a $5 billion tax cut, they added $5 billion to the government's debt. And it is ordinary New Zealanders, yes, Mr Prime Minister, ordinary New Zealanders, everyday New Zealanders who didn't get the tax cut, who aren't in the Cabinet Club, and they're the ones that have to pay back the $5 billion debt plus interest. Think of it as their way to be part of National's Cabinet Club. The Green Party believes it is time to take our country out of the hands of the National Party's exclusive Cabinet Club. It's time to steer our country away from debt and borrowing and to build a healthier, more sustainable economy that puts our people and our environment at the heart of our economic management. We can have a smarter, fairer, more inclusive and more sustainable economy, but sadly this exclusive Cabinet Club budget doesn't deliver one. Mr Speaker, I'll tell you what the legacy of this national government will be. The legacy of this government will be 30% of children living in poverty. Their legacy will be a 50% increase in net greenhouse gas emissions. And their legacy will be debt, mountains and mountains and mountains of debt. Fiscal debt, economic debt, social debt, environmental debt. When John Key became Prime Minister in 2008, government debt was $14 billion. Today, that figure has soared to $61 billion, and the budget projects that it will increase to $63.6 billion by mid-2015. That is money our children and our grandchildren will have to repay plus interest. Let's take a minute to put John Key's debt into perspective. Government debt now equates to about $13,500 for every man, woman and child in the country. And this budget pushes that to over $14,000 for every person in New Zealand. That is nearly $11,000 per person more than when John Key became Prime Minister. The man should get some kind of debt performance bonus. A ball and chain should be awarded to him that he can pass to future generations. John Key has been borrowing money at about $17,000 per minute for every minute he has been Prime Minister, including the hours he spends at Cabinet Club, where apparently he is not the Prime Minister, but he is nonetheless building up debt at $17,000 a minute while he attends Cabinet Club. And the annual cost of servicing the National Party's debt has risen to over $1 billion, has risen by over $1 billion since 2008. That is $1 billion every year we could be investing in our kids' health and education, or using to clean up and protect our environment. Now, the government will say that the global financial crisis and the Christchurch earthquakes are to blame for this situation. But it is the decisions of that National made in response to these crises that have made the debt monster even worse. In the middle of a global financial slowdown, National gave tax cuts to the wealthiest New Zealanders. This starved the government of over $5 billion in revenue, and now the government has to borrow to cover that cost. That is the simple truth. Let me be clear. The government borrows money that we all have to repay in order to pay for big tax cuts for the wealthiest people in the country. That is wrong. Those tax cuts to the wealthiest have also made New Zealand a more unequal country. The richest 1% now owns 16% of all the wealth in the country, while 50% of everyday New Zealanders have just 5% of the wealth. If you think about that as a building, it's like the top 1% have 1.5 floors at the top of the building all to themselves. Well, half of the country, 1.5 million adults, are crammed into only half of the basement. When I asked the Prime Minister about this yesterday, he suggested the Green Party didn't have ambition for a more prosperous country. Well, Mr Prime Minister, we have huge ambition for New Zealand, but unlike the government, our ambition is for all New Zealanders, not just the 1%. John Key's ambition is to enrich the 1%, and he is achieving his targets. The NBR Rich List of the 100 or so richest New Zealanders, they have increased their wealth by about 50% under National. Great job, Prime Minister, for the 1%. We can see who you work for. Mr Speaker, today Bill English announced that he hopes to achieve a surplus by June 2015. A surplus as thin as the ice that Judith Collins has been skating on. But the question is, who is paying for the surplus? Well, Rio Tinto isn't paying for the surplus. They received a $30 million government handout despite making a $3.7 billion profit. And of course, Sky City isn't paying for the surplus either. Following a dinner with the Prime Minister, next thing they got new gambling laws, which will see them further profit off the human misery of Auckland's problem gamblers. And Warner Brothers, they're not paying for the surplus either. They got their publicly funded tax breaks and employment law changes from the star-stuck groupies on the front bench of the National Party. And Anadarko and the mining companies, they're not paying for the surpluses either. They continue to get big government subsidies while paying some of the smallest mining royalty rates in the world. So if the wealthiest corporations aren't paying for the surplus, who is? Well, I'll tell you. It's the people of Christchurch, still waiting for their homes to be repaired, their roads to be fixed and their flooded neighbourhoods to be safe and dry. They're paying for the surplus. And it's our children who turn up to school with empty bellies, sick and not ready to learn. They are paying for the surplus. There is nothing in this budget for poor kids. Paid parental leave, well, welcome, will make no difference to the 3 out of 5 children living in poverty whose parents don't have a job. It is the young first home buyers struggling to repay their student debt while being locked out of the housing market. They are paying for the surplus. And it's our environment that is also funding this faux surplus, as 50% of our rivers and lakes are too polluted now to swim in. Our kaka, our rock wren, are paying for the cost of this mythical surplus too, along with the other threatened native birds that live in Victoria Forest Park, which National has opened up for mining. The Department of Conservation is having its budget decreased once again, with a $16 billion cut in real terms, while the funds set aside for protecting our iconic wildlife and our most treasured natural heritage has been cut by $7 million. Our health system will pay for the surplus, with significant real cuts in the health funding budget in the 3 years ahead. Likewise, education has significant real cuts over the next 3 years. National is paying for the surplus out of health and education funding. They are cutting funding in health and education in order to pay for this faux surplus. Our people and our environment are paying for this surplus, not National's Cabinet Club mates. The Green Party believes all our children should have equal rights to the opportunities that this country offers them. Opportunities built on the hard graft of generations that came before us. Previous generations built up our power assets, but when John Key got into office, he sold our power assets, making sure that 99% of our kids will lose the dividends from those assets, while 1% would gain from them immeasurably. Mr. Speaker, almost all New Zealand children paid for the surplus, and that is not right. John Key and Bill English appear to have a pathological commitment to saddling our younger generation of New Zealanders with a lifetime of debt and a deficit of opportunity. And I say to young New Zealanders, don't accept it. At this year's election, let us build an inclusive green economy with opportunities for all, not just members of the exclusive Cabinet Club. Mr. Speaker, if the news is bad for the government books, then the outlook for household budgets is even worse. The average power bill has risen by $361 a year under National. And if that's not bad enough, incomes in Otara, some of the poorest places in New Zealand, have dropped in real terms by 20% under the government. Families are really, really struggling. The truth is, the so-called competitive power market has failed in the same way the housing market failed our families, and National's response is more of the same. Mr. Speaker, if this had been our budget, we would have introduced our electricity reforms to decrease power prices, green our power generation and improve the overall efficiency of the energy sector. If this had been our budget, the Green Party would have introduced NZ Power as part of a smart solution to transition our energy sector into the modern world. If this had been our budget, we would have rolled out clean energy like our Solar Homes initiative so families can create their own electricity and reduce their dependence on the power companies. I'm talking about giving families real energy freedom. Under our initiative, families and households will get low-cost loans to pay for solar power installation, which they can repay through their rates, enjoying free sustainable power for decades. The government has done nothing to ease skyrocketing house prices, and that is a tragedy for young Kiwis trying to get into the housing market. If this had been our budget, the Green Party would have introduced a capital gains tax on property other than the family home to relieve the pressure on the housing market. If this had been our budget, we would have introduced our Home for Life package, which would have put home ownership within the reach of tens of thousands of Kiwi families. We think that also renters need a right to good quality housing and the protection of stable tenancies. These smart green ideas address the very real day-to-day household cost pressures on everyday New Zealanders, not just those of John Key's Cabinet Club. Mr. Speaker, there is nothing in this budget that will propel the New Zealand economy into the 21st century by creating good green jobs and protecting our environment. Creating economic prosperity without trashing our environment and our climate is the single biggest economic and environmental challenge of our time, and the potential gains from a low-carbon, high-tech economy are too significant to be ignored. There's a glaring gap in today's budget where the plan for a cleaner, smarter economy should be. In government, the Green Party will create a smarter, fairer economy that will deliver prosperity for everyone, that creates jobs, reduces inequality and protects our environment. It is triple bottom line accounting that is missing from National Party's old-school Cabinet Club thinking. The estimated potential market share of the global green economy available to New Zealand is up to $22 billion annually. To put this economic opportunity into perspective, that figure of $22 billion is double our current export earnings from dairy. Imagine having a truly diversified economy that made us twice as much money as dairy does, employs more people in diverse occupations and doesn't pollute our waterways. It is a win-win model that, through their actions and their previous budgets, National has repeatedly rejected. Instead, National has overseen a dangerous simplification of the New Zealand economy. Our economic simplification in dairying is at the exclusion of job opportunities in clean tech and other industries. As the budget documents state, manufactured exports are falling and the current account deficit is widening. The singular focus on low value-added commodity exports, specifically milk powder and raw logs, has exposed the whole economy to the risk associated with single product, single market approach. Of course, we have been here before. Exporting agricultural products to the UK worked well for a while, but once England joined the EU, we were without a buyer. At that time, our strategy was to diversify. Yet here we are again with an economy overly, almost singularly focused on dairy into one market, this time China. I agree with the concerns raised by experts that we have too many eggs in the China basket and we need a more diversified export base. Any downturn in the Chinese economy will disproportionately damage ours. This is not a smart way to run a modern economy. All the evidence shows that New Zealand is uniquely placed to seize the opportunities arising from the global shift towards clean energy. In 2011, the world invested $280 billion in renewable energy, and the global market for clean technologies is valued at more than $5 trillion. We already have expertise in wind and geothermal energy technology, and our Clean Green brand holds real economic value. The opportunities are there, and the Green Party will seize them 100% with open arms. But building a green economy requires new institutions to help drive us there. That's why the Green Party announced a Green Investment Bank this week to accelerate New Zealand's transition to a smarter, greener economy. The bank will help innovative, low-carbon projects and proposals to get finance so they can get off the ground. PricewaterhouseCoopers estimate that the clean technology sector could be worth between $7.5 and $22 billion to New Zealand by 2015 with the right focus and the right investment. Despite this, and the fact the clean tech sector is taking off overseas, National keeps funneling money into carbon-intensive industries like coal mining, oil drilling, industrial dairying. The Green Investment Bank will direct investment into the clean, profitable investments of tomorrow. It is just one of a suite of announcements the Green Party has announced to make sure we put our economy heading in the right direction for a high-tech, low-carbon economy. Mr. Speaker, the Greens are committed to changing the old way of doing things in order to build a smarter, fairer, cleaner world for all of us. This election is our opportunity to embark on that journey, to take the destiny of our country out of the hands of the exclusive Cabinet Club and put it into the hands of all New Zealanders. It is the journey we must take to ensure that our kids can stay here to work rather than moving overseas to get good jobs that they want. It is our journey towards an inclusive green economy where women and men are paid fairly and earn enough to lead good lives and offer the opportunity of great futures to their children. It is the journey that will see our rivers and lakes sparkling once more. It is the journey that will ensure our forest parks echo with the haunting calls of the kōkako rather than the deafening din of mining rigs. It is the journey towards a stable climate and a prosperous planet for us and our children. Together we can build an inclusive green economy for all of us. At this year's election, let's end the exclusive Cabinet Club. Let's put an end to the exclusive Cabinet Club economy and the exclusive Cabinet Club budget, and let's build a smarter, greener economy for the benefit of all New Zealanders.
Mr. Speaker.
The Right Honourable Winston Peters.
Speaking on behalf of the fastest rising political